Hello, everybody. Most of you know me. I'm Sally Rice. I'm from Heart Space Development and I'm a new business mentor. And today it's a bit of role reversal for me because I'm speaking with my coach, Lucienne. And usually Lucienne is the one asking me questions. So this is going to be good. Thank you for joining us, Lucienne.
Thank you for having me. And yes, it's very rare that I allow my client to put me in the hot seat like this. So I think I'm going to get a grilling, but I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you. No, thank you for having me. It's brilliant to be here, Sally.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I have already spoken a bit on my social media, as people who follow me might have seen, about having a coach, the fact that I've got a coach. I do put quite a lot on my stories. And obviously I do talk about a lot about having the right support as being a new business owner. And obviously Lucienne is a big part of that for me. But you haven't always been a coach, have you, Lucienne? Because obviously I talk about women transitioning, from being employed to obviously being an entrepreneur, running their own businesses. And that's your background as well, isn't it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yes, I'd love to. So I'm just thrilled that somebody that I'm working with has created a business that supports women in that new business journey, in that transitioning. Because when I left my last employment, I found it really difficult to find something that had the strategies and the resources, the mindset coaching and the mentorship. If it wasn't like tens of thousands of pounds, it was probably a bit rubbish, and maybe it was tens of thousands of pounds and rubbish as well. So it was really difficult. So I'm really happy. I'm so thrilled with what you've been putting together, and I feel that it's what I needed, because when I did leave my role, so I was quite senior in the world of education. I'd invested a huge amount of time and money into my development as a practitioner in education. Was working with a lot of universities to research and development around the human in the classroom, and ended up in a job which was a brilliant job on paper, absolutely amazing job. I still got to be in the classroom a little bit, which you don't get to be when you're in management. I managed to stay in the classroom a small amount of time, but also work on developing a much grander, much larger kind of coaching, mentoring, head of languages, and kept my toes in the water when it came to being a practitioner.
Yeah.
But what really frustrated me was the fact that what I'd set out to do, what I was learning, the professional status that I'd created for myself, we were talking about identity, was completely overlooked. It hadn't been overlooked until I got to this last place of my employment. And interestingly enough, and probably not because they were all men, I was the youngest and only female member on a circle, of board directors, and my expertise and my knowledge wasn't really valued in the way it needed to be.
Yeah.
So it took a little while, but I realized that I was actually working against my value set. And every day I was having to force myself into work, and that had never happened before. Bearing in mind, I'd been pregnant, doing a part-time master's degree and working full-time in education, and absolutely bloody loved it. I went to a new environment with people who didn't value me and ended up having a bit of an existential crisis. And so that's where I am.
I'm sure lots of women can identify that. I certainly enjoyed a very large part of my corporate, journey. But in the end, it didn't feel right. And, when you have that feeling, when you don't want to get up in the morning and go to work, that isn't right. And that's not, I think deep inside that's not what you should be doing. Yes, no, I can very much identify with that. Obviously, some people, like we did, obviously then make the choice to go into working for themselves. And we did talk a little bit before we started about identity, so we can touch on that. But what other challenges for you were there in that transition, going from being
Mm-hmm.
an employee to an entrepreneur? I mean, I know there are many.
There are
Right.
many. So off the top of my head, being a mum and the reasoning at the school, so this is a large secondary school in our county, being that I wanted to leave to spend more time with my son because my son had just been diagnosed with ASD, and that not being the reason why I wanted to leave.
Wow.
And spinning that narrative was really frustrating, really frustrating. So I had to deal with, as many women do have to do, in curating your own story rather than the story being imposed by the people around you, and actually my story being as important, if not more important, because it was my truth, than the story that's being spoken. Yeah, she's leaving because she wants to spend more time with her son. No, that's not why I'm leaving. In fact, I went back to work very soon after I had my son because I love my work and my identity is my work. So that was one thing that I found really difficult. Another thing was, initially, I suppose, and clients that I work with have this a lot more than I did, but I did have a fraction of this, is not knowing where the money's going to come from. There was a couple of weeks where I was like, oh my God, I am actually going to have to find money myself through my own means, and I'm not going to have somebody just passing that to me for my time. I've got to create this. But I actually managed to pivot that quite quickly in my head because and I use this with my clients, I put the facts in front of myself, where had I ever struggled to make ends meet, had I ever been in a position where I was pushed and I hadn't managed to provide for my family? No. So why would it be any different now?
Yeah.
And as soon as that
it's totally familiar.
Yeah, very familiar to a lot of people. But what's really fascinating, Sally, is working with lots and lots of different women. You can see some women with a history and a pattern of thinking around money who have that, and they hold on to it for a really long time. And you see some women who've got a different pattern or a different history, and it might be about something completely different. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a client who felt suffocated by her work and actually felt suffocated by the paycheck that she was getting because she felt like it was golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
And so actually for her, the most liberating thing that she could do was to make her own money to prove that she could. So her mindset was completely different. But we're all on this different spectrum, really, when it comes to our beliefs around money making. And, you know, where one client might have a problem with money mindset, another person might have something around identity. So limiting beliefs around, well, let's take you, for example. You've been a director at a really high level in a company for years, and then you're starting your own business. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean for your identity and your positioning? So a lot of people struggle with that too. And I would say that's what I struggled with more than where my money was going to come from. Because that label of leader, and knowing that I was the go-to person for a number of things, to all of a sudden being on my own.
Definitely.
And not being seen as the person at the top of their game. I'm a newbie. I'm a new business owner.
And that can be a really, I mean, I've definitely gone through that, as you know, like, you know, especially when, as I said earlier, like when work is all consuming and perhaps a lot of your social life is around work, your friends are around work, you know, you've enjoyed your work for a long period of time. And then, and yes, absolutely, you've got that title and that status to suddenly be like, oh, right, I'm none of those things anymore. I'm different things, but I'm not those things. And especially if you've been in the same maybe career or the same job for a long time, it can be, an interesting shift. Definitely one that I obviously, as you know, identify with. So obviously now you do coaching and primarily with women. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you do now and how you help people?
Sure. So I didn't want to be doing what I'm doing now. Actually, that was never my intention. I ended up attracting a couple of clients early on. I did I worked with a couple of women on interview coaching, actually, when I first started. And I was very lucky. I got brought into an organisation through that work with the director. And a lot of people were asking me questions about, I'd had a nervous breakdown 10 years prior, and asking me questions about, how did I have the gumption to start up my own business? Where did that come from? How could you do that? And I realized that actually a lot of what I'd experienced was something that women don't really hear very openly about. And so I was like, well, if I can help here, then that's what I'm going to do. I also happen to be a feminist. And for me, the definition of feminism is simply equality, in all realms of the world, whether that's socio-economic, political, just equality. And so I really struggled with the concept of working with just women, because that to me went against the grain of my drive for equality. But actually the balance is so skewed. The more research that I did into how skewed the balance was, the more I couldn't help myself but go, I need to work on this section of the population. And I'm a woman.
That one.
You what?
We're very much on the same page with that one.
Yeah, it's really difficult. My mates used to call me a bra burner, and all sorts of just horrifically uneducated stuff around feminism. And, there are loads of different groups in the feminist world who aren't particularly kind to one another, and that's not something that I want to get involved with. I'm simply about equality. And so when I changed my business name from Sense Coach to Lucienne Coaching, and it was about female empowerment, all of my male friends were like, yeah, you're all about equality, are you? Yeah, I see. You just want to work with women.
It's interesting. I had the same when we had my old corporate role, and we had training that was specifically for women within the business. All the men in the business were like, oh, well, where's our training? And, it was some had a bit more of an open mind, but it's, I think the more you look into that misbalance, like you said, it's, women have their own challenges, internal and external, that
we really do.
and don't have those things, but women have obviously a little bit more of those things, generally speaking.
Yes.
Which is obviously why I've decided to go down the route of helping women as well. But can you explain for me, because I think probably not everybody watching necessarily completely understands what coaching is, maybe compared to mentoring, how would you describe those? Because people talk about both in the kind of similar conversation. So how would you describe what you do versus what a mentor does?
Yeah, I'm quite a purist with this. And of course, I believe my opinion to be absolutely correct because of the circles in which I've studied, which are pretty profound when it comes to coaching and mentoring. So coaching puts the client in the position where the client knows the answer. The answer is inside of them, and it gives them the opportunity, the space and the time to bring that up from either subconscious or from working memory or brain. It's not therapy. We're not talking about the past. We're taking you from where you are right now, and we're moving you forward all the time. So a great coach this is a quote that I use a lot, does not solve your problems for you. They give you the opportunity to solve your own problems. A mentor is somebody who has been there, done that, and leads the way and goes, do you know what? You're at this stage in your business. I've done this, and I've seen a lot of people doing this. I think this could work best for you. Knowing you, what do you think could be the best way that works for you? So there's a lot more suggestion. With pure coaching and the pure coachists, if you pollute the client's space with suggestion or instruction, that's not coaching. And so I'm both. I'm a coach and a mentor. And my clients come to a point where they understand if we're coaching and we understand if we're mentoring. So recently, we've been leaning a bit more heavily towards the mentorship side, But that doesn't mean that, every now and again some coaching is required, where you're like, right, let me just put my coaching hat on for a second. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and you're going to need to just sit and let the answers come to you. And it does take quite a skilled coach or mentor to be able to do those things. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of work. So that's the difference. You're not a therapist, you're not a counsellor. You are taking somebody from where they are now, you're moving them forwards, and you're not polluting their space.
I think that's a really actually good description of, I know coaching is more of what you do, and obviously I call myself a new business mentor, so I'm very much in that mentoring space, pretty much exactly how you've described it in terms of like my journey and passing on the knowledge and what I've learned to other people on a similar-ish journey. So yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that. And you work with women in different ways. Obviously we work in one-to-one, and you also have a number of other things that you do, don't you? You have a membership, and do you want to tell us a little bit about the different things that you do?
Yeah, okay. So my main income stream comes from corporate coaching. So I work with boards, executive boards, to look at how they're retaining their female talent. I do programs with female leaders inside those organizations. And then a great part of my work is one-to-ones, although I'm not doing as much of that anymore. That is, quite a premium now part of my business, because I can only serve one person at a time for the time that I've got. And the membership. So the membership, I just bloody love the membership. We run it at a loss last year because I loved it so much and wasn't being particularly business savvy, but really wanted to create something that women could come to, where they would have safe, solid information, accountability and structure, alongside some of that higher level, high performance mindset coaching. So the membership is open again. And Sally, we've got some great people in there, and I really hope that all the work that we've done to make this work is worth it. I feel like it will be, but it's you never know. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So.
Absolutely, no, really, really excited about that. And you mentioned accountability there, which is something else that I've spoken about recently. And how does that come into your, like, how much of an importance do you put on that with the work that you do with women, and how much do you think people need that or want that? I think there's probably some people watching thinking, oh, why would I need a coach? How could a coach help me? Like, accountability for me personally is a big one. Going from the corporate world where you've got managers and MDs or whoever it is, keeping you accountable, to working for yourself where nobody's keeping you accountable.
Yeah,
I find that really hard. So do you find that's a big part of what people want from coaching with you?
Yeah, and I think that comes into the discussion when you first start about what the client specifically needs. So accountability it's paradoxical, really. It's really easy, but on the flip side, it's quite a difficult thing to ensure the consistency unless both parties are really committed to it. So what's great about the coaching structure that we have, for example, so I see you every week, and part of that showing up every week is simply accountability. So I used to do a once a month one-to-one, and I just didn't feel like the clients were holding themselves to account, and therefore I was doing a lot more kind of phoning in between sessions and checking in, and so that consistency is massively important. And the accountability when you work, just showing up is the first stage of accountability, and then actually doing the work. So part of my contracting process is that my clients have to delegate an hour. They have to dedicate an hour to working on themselves, on the coaching stuff in between the sessions. And I know very quickly when people aren't doing that. So it's there's that side of things, and then the membership has actually got like a check-in and a check-out. But you know what? Something that I think is really profound about coaching is that, it's certainly from my experience, because I have a coach and my coach's coach has a coach. I really believe if you're a coach, you're not worth it unless you've got your own coach. Is the permission that having a coach gives you to have your ideas and go, do you know what? That is actually quite a good idea. Having a coach really gives you permission to follow through on the ideas that you have. And simply by remaining in that space with them once a week or however frequently it is, you're kept in alignment with those ideas and with those dreams and those aspirations. And so as soon as that stops, you detach yourself from it because you haven't got that accountability and you haven't got the permission. So it's difficult to find a great accountability coach, because really all it is have you done that, yes or no? If no, I'm no longer prepared to work with you. Well, you can't do that. You can't go, I'm no longer prepared to work with you, because you haven't done your accountability for a week. But with some coaches, the highest of stakes makes you do it. So therefore you spend £45,000 a month, for example. And if you don't do what you say, you've lost 45 grand.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I mean, it was interesting you were saying about permission there, and it kind of made me think about the permission to give ourselves as new business owners, because I do talk also a lot about new business owners wearing a lot of hats. You know, obviously suddenly we are sales, we are marketing, we are admin, we are everything. And I talk a lot about the importance of delegating and outsourcing, but actually giving ourselves the permission to work on ourselves as part of our, you know, working week, if you like. Because I think that, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, the fact that I feel like I haven't been doing enough of that recently. But actually, I think having a coach, that is time that you are investing in yourself, rather than just cracking on with all of the things, which is so easy to do. So easy. But so that's certainly what I've taken away from it. But as you know, my approach to what I do is all about practical advice for people, and taking tangible, tips and things that they can do. So is there, for new female business owners or aspiring female business owners, is there a couple of things that you would be able to share with them to help them on their journey from a coaching point of view, or suggestions even?
Absolutely. Get yourself a really good accountant.
Yes.
Get yourself a really good accountant. If you don't know what you're doing in an area, seek out somebody who does and either learn from them or bring them in. Work out what your skills are and double down on them. If you don't know what your strengths are as a professional and you're simply kind of putting your finger in the air and doing this, it's not a great way of creating the energy that you need to sustain the business. You need to be playing to your strengths all the time. So if you're spending the majority of your time on your accounting, on your £10 tasks like editing videos, accounting, and that's not you, then pass that out. That's what I would recommend before you are financially able to. So if you will soon become able to do that financially, but that delegation of even the £10 stuff, if you do it before it becomes an absolute necessity, you're ahead of the curve and you're keeping that wheel moving all the time. Don't make tens of thousands of pounds worth of investment unless you have seen people go through a program and be successful. Really do your research in what you're investing in and whether or not the people have actually made progress. There are a lot of people selling courses in business development. It is a sharky world out there. Be careful and get yourself a great coach or mentor. And the way that you do that is by speaking to people who are on their business journey, who have worked with somebody, rather than phoning up coaches and asking them if they can, we got together through a mutual connection who'd been working with me. So do your due diligence before you invest. And the last thing I will say, even if you don't know the answer, your intuition and your gut instinct absolutely knows the answer. So trust that you've got what it takes to make progress, that your level of emotional intelligence is strong enough to know if this is good for you or if this is bad for you. Really work on that intuition. That's what I would say.
I love that. I love that. I love all that advice. I think the only thing I would say is that if you're no good at it or you don't enjoy it, I would get rid of it. Like I am not a graphic designer and I was doing those kind of things. And when you're doing things that we all know, when we do things that we don't really want to be doing, one, we take longer because we procrastinate. And two, it's just such a negative energy drain. So when I've spoken to people about, because I'm a big fan of delegating and outsourcing, if you don't think you feel like you're very good at it, or if you don't enjoy it, just get someone else. It doesn't even have to be bringing a person on as an employee. It can be using someone Fiverr or or something like that, if it's that kind of thing that you're after. But no, that was some really useful advice. Thank you. And thank you for joining me today. It was weird in a way being the other way.
You loved it. I bet you loved it. It's brilliant. And like I say, I really, really wish that, I've been looking at you putting this course together. I've been looking at what you've been doing, and I'm very cautious of recommending, as you can probably tell from what I've been saying in this, and just looking at your course and the conviction with which you want to make sure that these people who do that work make progress. I'm just so confident that people who do it will really, really benefit. And I just wish that I'd had it when I started. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the progress of that with your clients.
No, coming soon. Thank you for the little pitch there.
No, I think it's brilliant. I love it. I've got like first-hand experience of seeing what Sally's been doing, and it's really good.
Oh, thank you. No, I love that. Thank you, Lucienne, and thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you for everyone that's watching. I see someone's been watching live, and for anyone that's watching on catch up, thank you. So thank you, Lucienne. Thanks. Bye.